Hi there, and thanks for tuning in. This is going to be a tutorial video about some of the basic things you can do to use Claude better based on some of the trends that are going around at the moment on LinkedIn and blogs talking about how to get the most out of your work with your AI. So this could be for any kind of job. I'm going to show you one particular job today, which is in my role as a jury member for a training course, an AI training course. And I'm going to do some work with a document and just show you 3 different layers that you can use to work better with Claude in terms of how to give it the context that it needs to do its job right. And I think you might be surprised at least one of the levels that you might not be doing yourself, and you might realize that that is one of the problems you're having with getting Claude to produce something you're actually happy with. I always say if I meet people in my training courses as part of my work as an AI trainer, when I meet people who are not able to, are not satisfied with what they're getting out of Claude, I almost always think it's possible that Claude's making mistakes, but it's much more likely that they're just not giving Claude the right context that they could be giving to get the most out of it. So anyway, I'll dive straight in. Let's just first get the scope of what we're trying to do. So I have a document here, and it is a PDF for the exam that I do that explains the different deliverables, what the people who do the training course have to deliver. And it's in PDF. So let's just take this example where I actually don't have the original Word document version of this, and I want to make a change to it because there's something has changed with the way that the training course works, and there's a small adjustment that we need to make with this document to make sure that people understand what they need to deliver for the final exam. So what we're going to do to get this file into Claude is to directly add it to the chat. This is what you do when you want to have a document that Claude will read in its entirety. This is the level of, I want to give you something and I want you to study the whole thing and not miss anything. So it's the maximum number of tokens of all the 3 options that you can use, but it is the one that will get Claude to 100% understand what you're trying to put in front of it. So if I say, I need to make some changes to this PDF, can we rewrite it in Markdown so that we can discuss changes, and then I'll bring it back into docx format. Something like that. I just want to get it into a format that I can work with. The easiest way in the beginning is going to be Markdown. Markdown is a simplified version of document formatting that's going to give us a way to work on the document, check the changes really easily with an AI. If I ask it to immediately do a docx format and then I start asking it to make changes, it's going to be more tokens and more time and more complexity for Claude to make little changes to a docx all the time, rather than just a very simple change in a Markdown file. Markdown files are very, very basic, whereas a docx has a lot of XML meta language behind it that it takes up a lot more tokens to work with. So I'm going to start with this and see where that takes us. And yes, there are like formatting questions here, like the document has little squares that's not going to appear in Markdown. Things like titles, bold, numbered lists, that will appear in Markdown, that's fine. Bullet points, things like that. But like the bit at the bottom, that's sort of a formatting stamp of the address of the company who made this, will be more complicated, I think, to get out of Markdown. There's no kind of centered text or left aligned text or things like that. It's just the very basic. I think you're about to see it anyway. Yeah. So you can see that it's extracted the text into a very like text format rather than document format. That's going to be way quicker and easier to work with than having to put it into docx from the beginning. Okay, so now it's asking me what changes we want to make. We can rock out and do whatever we need to. One thing that we could do at this point would be to take this document and put it in somewhere, like this one that it's created here from the PDF, that's now going to potentially give me a way to give context to a larger job that might not be just to make a little change in this document, but that might be to use this document plus other documents to plan out, for example, a marketing campaign or something, a course program that we're going to do in the future. So what we can do with that is we can move up to the second level of context. So we give the context that was the direct file, everything in there. Now we can move it up to project level context, where we make this conversation part of an ongoing project. It's not just a one-shot conversation. And that's where you take work with Claude to a different level. If this is like a recurring theme, if this is something that you need to work on regularly, you keep having these one-shot conversations or like reigniting old conversations, because you know that that's where Claude did the work before, so that you can just continue the conversation that you left off a week ago. But putting it into a project gives it a way of knowing across multiple conversations what you're trying to do, having a kind of global mission statement, and having multiple files that it can make reference to. So easy way to do this, if you've just done the conversation and you think, ooh, this is really good, I actually could do more with this, why not click here next to the conversation name, click add to project. Let's call it Long Expert Improvements. And then it'll say create if it doesn't already have a name. If you do have a name, you can just select it if you've already created a project before. So that's now part of a project called Long Expert Improvements. So let's have a look at that just to see what that looks like. So you can see there's kind of a project space with a title, memory, which will develop the more that you converse with Claude, and instructions where you can actually add your own custom instructions to that. Let's just go back to have a look at this then. It means that any future conversations you have where Claude makes a file, so probably a markdown file, you can click up here next to copy and click add to project. Because it's part of a project, you can just beam it straight up into the project. Otherwise, you could have just gone here, clicked upload from device, downloaded the markdown, upload it. I'm just trying to show you that as you go along working with this project, you can be adding the files that are produced from the conversations to the higher level context, which is the files. You're only going to add things here in the files part that are applicable possibly to other conversations in the project. The advantage is I could have a whole bunch of different files here. They don't have to be all relevant to each conversation. Claude knows they exist. It processes them and puts them into memory, knows that they exist. And so if I start a conversation and say, what do you know about the deliverables for Long Expert? It's going to say something about searching project files. And then it's going to access that file because it knows it has access to that. Oh, it doesn't even say it anymore. It used to say that, but now it has just ingested it completely. It used to have a little thing at the top that said looking at project files, and it would show you which files that it was accessing from the project. Just to prove a point that you could have 100 files in here. It's totally fine as long as you haven't hit the project capacity. If it only needs one file to answer the question you gave it, then it'll just use that one file. So you're never wasting tokens, and accessing these files costs less tokens in general. I think from what I read, it costs less tokens because they're already pre-ingested by Claude. Like for example, you can't edit them. Once they're in, they're in. There's no way to go in and change them. So it's like you've committed them to the project. Now in the future, if you do need to change them, you can just remove it and add the new version. It doesn't cost anything. So there's no need to worry about the fact that you can't edit the file, is what I'm trying to say. So that's the second level of context, where you're going to get more and more files added to this, projects that become more and more complex. And that also feeds into the rest of your life in Claude. When you go into a different project and ask a question, sometimes Claude will say, oh, this is like that other project, and we'll be able to go and access the memory from that other project to know what you were doing in there. So you start to build up, rather than just one, having it limited to just one conversation, you start to build up this kind of workspace where Claude starts to understand how you like to work. Now there's another thing. Say I finish my modifications and I want to produce this back into a document like this again. Well, that's going to be tricky for it to do. I can upload the PDF again to a new conversation and say, based on the style here, can you make this document? But the easiest thing would be, I'm going to go and get the logo here, which should be, I think, if I remember right. Nope, I'm wrong. Sorry. Maybe it was .com in the end. No, it's .net. Is my friend's website down? Oh dear. Okay, I just spelled it wrong. So wherever the site is, often you can just go and click copy image address or open an image in new tab to make sure that it's really there. Looks fine. So copy image address. Remember with Claude, it can't add images. If you just upload an image, it can't add it to the document, but it can add a link to an image. So if you can find somewhere to host the image where you can actually get the .png version of the link, I don't think Google Drive uploads work the same way, but if you can find somewhere to upload it where you can get that .png or .jpeg or whatever, then we can tell Claude, either here we can say, this is how I want my documents to be made in the conversation. But then if you're working for this company and you're doing a lot of different documents for this company, possibly multiple projects for this company, then you're on the third level of context, which is in the customize menu on the left. You've got skills. And at the moment I have no skills, so let's make one. We're going to go plus create skill, create with Claude. I would recommend this rather than doing it by yourself. Unless you want to, that's great, but Claude does really good skills. So create with Claude opens a conversation. Let's create a skill together using your skill creator task. So it's just a pre-message. You could also have just started a conversation about it. You didn't have to go through the menu. I just wanted to show you where that was. So every time we make a document for Linguade or Longexpert, I want you to put this logo at the top right. And maybe I should tell it the color as well. So what's the Linguade color? Does he have a color on the website? I really have to update this website. Oh, there is a color there. Look, I saw one. There I am. Oh, goodness. I was so young back then. No, not there. Okay, hold on. That's a color. That'll do. Let's inspect that. And then there we go. Use that color. Is that the right? Yeah. Okay, blue. Also use this blue color for any titles or headings. Okay, so we'll start that. What it's going to do is it's going to make an instruction document for itself. So it's going to write instructions to say, hey Claude, when whatever, want to create a document, this is what you need to put in the top left, this is the color you need to make. We commit that to not the project context this time, but the global context of your whole Claude account. So that lives in Claude's brain across all conversations, across all projects. What kind of documents does this cover? Let's just say Word docs, HTML, PDFs. And it's just going to write another markdown file. So it's not doing any kind of magic. It's just, oh, for goodness sake, just write the thing. Sorry, I'm being really mean to Claude. I will apologize later. It's nothing magical. It's just the more that Claude has access to prompt things to inject into the prompt, the better it's going to get. Back in 2 years ago when I started doing the AI training with Linguade, the advice that I gave everybody was you have to get into prompt engineering. You have to go to this website, read all these articles and know, because, you know, in the end, if you want to get something good out of ChatGPT or Claude, you've got to type, you know, and I was showing like 2-page long prompts, like this will work because it's got all the context you've ever needed. And today, because of these extra systems that we have, like project files and skills, we don't need to do that anymore. We can, Claude can inject all of the context that it needs, pages and pages of context, and it can handle it just by knowing I have access to this in the skills and this. Just, it looks at the list and it says, oh, that skill is probably what I need. So you could have like 50 skills. It's not going to use them all, and you're not going to waste tokens in every conversation. But it'll go find the skill it needs, apply it to this conversation, or 2 or 3 skills. And maybe you're also in a project, so it goes and finds 2 or 3 project files. And maybe also in this conversation, you have a very specific file that doesn't apply to the whole project, but you want it to be aware of, like a screenshot, for example. So you want to take a screenshot of the PDF that it created and say, there's something wrong with this PDF, we need to fix it. So you've got all three levels potentially working together in the same conversation. And that's why we've gone from a world of like heavy prompt engineering and every user needs to know how to write a massive, amazing prompt, to a world where you just need to have the right skills, which is why, again, like I said in the article that I wrote recently on LinkedIn, you don't need to buy into necessarily all the hype on the internet with, we'll provide you with the best prompt ever, and they've written the 2-page prompt. That's, the AI world is moving so fast, that's not relevant since like the end of last year. So today, anybody can talk to Claude and write their own mega prompts and get Claude's help to do it. Whereas last year it was tricky because Claude wasn't clever enough to make really good prompts for itself. At the moment, it seems from my experience that it is good enough to do that. So I would really recommend that you try doing these things by yourself. And if you can't and you want to download somebody's mega prompt, that's fine. But maybe save their mega prompt as a skill. Maybe be careful of anybody who's claiming to give you a mega prompt that you have to paste into a conversation, and trust people more who are giving you a mega skill and saying, put this skill into your Claude Customize section and it will help you with design. That for sure is a thing, because you might have some designers who have really good ideas about front-end design, PDF design, document design, where you put that skill in there and then suddenly all your documents come out looking beautiful. So that's something to consider for sure. Go with the people who have the modern approach and not necessarily with the ones who are still doing December 2025 stuff like giant mega prompts that you need to paste into the conversation. And I'm done with the rant. So it's made a skill. It's a markdown document, but it knows it's a skill. So it's given me the button Save Skill. When I click Save Skill, then if I go back to my Customize skills, there you go, Linguid documents. So now I have a skill called Linguid documents. I can turn it on or off. So this is a great way that if you have skills that you sometimes want to use, but sometimes you're having a conversation where that skill just might confuse it, turn it off and just turn it back on again afterwards. And if this skill if the context changes and maybe the logo URL is not valid anymore, then you can also go to edit and it'll normally let you, edit with Claude. Sorry, I turned it off. So edit with Claude, you can go back into the conversation, a new conversation, and say, hey, the logo is updated. Can you please update the skill? Or just edit it by hand. If it was the logo, you would just edit it by hand, for goodness sake. So you just paste it in there. But let's say there's a few things that you need to work through to understand what to change, then just have a conversation with Claude. It'll bring the skill back into the conversation, tell you ask you the questions that it needs to ask to get the right changes. And then afterwards you'll have the skill back into, it'll modify the skill directly in your skills list rather than you having to upload it and download it and delete it and all that stuff. So yeah, there you go. I think that's enough for today already. I think that's enough to get started with. You should go away now and think about, what do I do with Claude every day that these 3 different levels of context would actually help with. And if you think actually I'm not doing anything with Claude where that would be relevant, there's something wrong. Or your job is, I don't know, I was about to say like a flower salesperson, but no, a flower sales, you could definitely, I go out in my garden at the weekend and I take pictures of random bushes that I find in the garden because I don't know what they are. And Claude talks me through what I should do with them. Should I leave it there? Should I dig it up? When I dig it up, will the root system be really complicated? So no, actually, I can't think of anything that you would not need these 3 different levels of context for. So if you're not doing this and you think that you don't need to do this, maybe send me a message because there's something wrong and we need to talk about it. So thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.